We've got a big blockbuster trade and a big week on the waiver wire here on Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. What's up, everybody? Thanks for watching FFT here on CBS Sports Network. I'm Adam Azer with my best friends, Dave Richard and Jamey Eisenberg. I hope you guys are ready. Look, it's a tough waiver wire week because there's a lot of ifs. If Aaron Jones is out, pick up Ty Chandler. If James Cook is out again, Ray Davis is the man. If Jordan Mason's out, etc. The wide receivers, a little bit more clear there. But we're going to start right away with Davante Adams. Our 5 big topics. He is topic number 1. He is going to the New York Jets for a conditional 3rd-round pick, could turn into a 2nd-round pick, and he could play this week, expected to play this week at Pittsburgh. Very exciting stuff, Jamey Eisenberg. What do you make of it? Give me the fantasy takeaways. Davante Adams going to the Jets.
Well, first and foremost, I'm glad this saga is over, that we know that where Adams is going to play. We know that the Raiders and what their offense will look like rest of the season, assuming that Aiden O'Connell is the starting quarterback. But for the Jets, we now have to see how we're going to use Davante Adams, how we're going to use Garrett Wilson as fantasy managers. I would put Adams slightly ahead of Wilson just because of the rapport and the move to go get him. You know, Rodgers is going to lean on Adams as much as he possibly can. Those two, one of the best quarterback wide receiver duos in NFL history. So at 31 years old, will Adams pick up where he left off? I hope he's better than what he was with the Raiders, but can be a number 2 fantasy receiver. Tough matchup against Pittsburgh, but the rest of the, at least for foreseeable schedule, is favorable for the Jets. So it's great for Aaron Rodgers. It's a slight downgrade for Garrett Wilson, and hopefully Adams can be the best of Davante Adams, even at his age and what we saw from him earlier in the season with Las Vegas.
He has 76 touchdowns, over 687 catches from Aaron Rodgers in his career. So that's 1 every 9 catches. 24% target per route run rate. That means he gets the ball a lot. 67% catch rate. ADOT is 10.13 yards. Yards per route run, 2.0. He's been efficient, explosive, and awesome. And when I've watched Davante Adams play both this year and last year, he's looked good. So I look at Davante Adams as a number 1 fantasy wide receiver moving forward.
Number 1?
Not the number 1, a number 1.
Top
a top 12 type of fantasy wide receiver.
Wow.
And I think Garrett Wilson's going to be a top 15, 18 type wide receiver. We've seen it across the league where Cincinnati's got 2 good wide receivers. Philadelphia's got 2 good wide receivers.
They don't have a 40-year-old quarterback and a 31-year-old wide receiver.
You know what this offense is going to do now. They're going to throw it a ton. Volume is going to be in the favor of both of these wide receivers. I'm good with Davante Adams as a top 12 wideout moving forward.
I mean, another comparison would be the Rams, right? Just going into the season. Now, those guys are obviously hurt, but you do have an old quarterback who maybe is playing about the same level as Aaron Rodgers. I don't know, but similar. And we liked Puka Nacua as a 1st-round pick. Cooper Kupp was going around the 2-3 turn. I don't know.
That was in such a creative offense, though. This offense has got a long way to go.
But they started to show it in that game on Monday. They used a lot more motion.
50-yard Hail Mary.
Well, but that's certainly part of it. But we're ignoring that part of it because that's not sustainable. This offense is going to grow and get better because they're adding another piece to it. And it's going to impact how defenses play.
They're definitely going to get better, but I think it's going to help Breece Hall. I don't think they're going away from the run game. To say Davante Adams got top 12 wide receiver potential, I hope people are buying that because I'll be selling Davante Adams all day.
Well, let's take a look at who the top 12 wide receivers are per game. Right now in a PPR, A.J. Brown, Malik Neighbors,
sure.
We'll take out Rashee Rice, Nico Collins, Chris Godwin, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp for what that's worth, Justin Jefferson, Jaden Reed. Why don't we go right there? He's wide receiver 8 if we remove Rashee Rice.
Mm-hmm.
Jaden Reed or Davante Adams?
I think you'll see Adams get more targets, and I think he'll be the better wide receiver.
Give me Reed all day.
Drake London would be next.
London
Adams
all day.
That one, I think I'd go with London.
Stephon Diggs.
Diggs all day while Nico Collins is out, and then Nico Collins just goes back in and he's better than him.
Right.
Yeah, but
rest of season, I'd rather have Adams than Diggs because I expect Nico Collins back in 3 games.
It's very close. You got 2 old receivers. I'll take the guy on the Texans right now.
Wow.
I think you're going to regret that one, Jamey.
I'm not going to regret that. We don't even know if Wilson's not better than Davante Adams at this point.
Well, he definitely is starting to get a good connection going with Rodgers, but we know the chemistry between Adams and Rodgers. This is something they wanted. And it might take a week for it to work out. I think Wilson will be better than Adams this week, but I think after this week, I think you're going to see Davante Adams go back to being Davante Adams. We also knew the chemistry
with Nico Collins and C.J. Stroud, and Stroud has gone right into leaning on Stephon Diggs. So it's not like a new receiver coming in versus a guy that has the rapport.
What do you mean leaning into Stephon Diggs?
Stephon Diggs is a guy that that he has developed a rapport with, right, C.J. Stroud?
Oh, yeah, no question. But he's the number 2 receiver in that offense.
But the history was with Nico Collins. Just going
right,
back
and who's the number 1 receiver when everybody's healthy in that offense?
My point is that Wilson can still be the guy that he leans on because this is the guy that he's been working with now. And Todd Downing may still be calling more plays for Garrett Wilson than he is for Davante Adams. It's a toss-up. We don't know how it's going to be. But top 12, no way am I trusting Davante Adams to be that good.
Okay. We also have guys like CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown who
all
are
better than
not.
Those two are better too, sure.
Okay, I think comparing him to someone like DJ Moore or Terry McLaurin.
He's ahead of those guys.
Now we're in the same conversations where Davante Adams is, but he's in the conversation with those guys. He's not necessarily guaranteed to be better than.
I'll say he'll be better.
All right, difference of opinion there. And Garrett Wilson is actually like wide receiver 12 per game, actually, which is kind of funny. But all right, let's actually talk about last night's game, okay? And the Bills with a 23-20 win. Despite the Hail Mary, Aaron Rodgers is the king of the Hail Mary. We should point that out. But we've talked enough about the Jets. Dave, what are your Bills takeaways from last night?
How about Ray Davis showing what he's capable of doing? Got a huge opportunity and literally ran away with it starting from the first quarter on. That would make me feel like Buffalo could let James Cook take his time to come back from the toe injury. Davis is a rookie who really did some great things at Kentucky. Now here he is doing it in Buffalo. I was impressed. I didn't think he was this good of a running back to do that against the Jets, but sure enough, he did. And that's why he's going to be one of the top guys that you'll prioritize off the waiver wire as soon as you set your waivers. Tonight, tomorrow, whenever it may be.
Just keep in mind when you see the 3 for 55, one of those catches was a 42-yard reception on a broken play. You're not going to see that I think consistently moving forward. But anytime you're getting 23 total touches, 20-plus total touches, tough matchup coming up against the Titans. We don't know how long Cook is going to be out. After that, the schedule lightens up very favorably for Buffalo. So it could be a great situation for Davis. And just keep an eye on what happens moving forward when Cook is back, because we could see both these running backs getting touches. Mm-hmm. We know going into the season that they wanted to have a little bit more of a physical presence in their backfield, and maybe Davis has done enough to earn a bigger role when Cook is healthy.
All right, so we have a little bit of a controversy in offense. Okay, we got to help people out here. Got the fan. We're gonna get our fantasy cops, our badges out right now. Let's take a look at this. I don't know if I have the music. I don't know if it's gonna come through on national TV, but we can try it. You ready? All right, fantasy cops. Here we are, pulling you over and taking a look at your league disputes. Look at this manager. First of all, a very mean team name, Fire Billy Napier. Like, give the guy a chance. They almost had a big win. What he did was he picked up every single Bills or Jets running back that could possibly be rostered on Monday night and dropped them all immediately to put them back on waivers. Would you penalize someone for adding and dropping every available replacement for James Cook ahead of Monday Night Football so their opponent has no options? The manager that did it ended up winning by 4 fantasy points. What do we do here, officers Eisenberg and Richard?
So Fire Bill Napier ended up winning?
Yeah, by 4 points.
Finally, Bill Napier wins something.
And do we know who the opponent was going to add of these options to replace James Cook?
Nah, I don't know that, but you have to figure it'd be Ray Davis or Tyler Johnson.
You would think so. So what I would probably do is one of two things. Just because this is such a horrible thing to do, they get the option of picking up the player that they would have gotten and get those points, and they get the win. Or Fire Billy Napier gets their roster frozen for a week, and they can't make any ad drops.
Only a week?
Yep.
It's so dirty. Now, there may be nothing to get rules against that, but we know you can't do that. You can't do that, right? It's terrible.
No, it's horrible etiquette. You would hate for that to happen to you if this was in your league, which is why the commissioner should have stepped in and said, you can have any player you want who's been added or dropped. Don't worry about waivers. Just let me know who you want before the game starts. I'll give them to you. You don't have to worry about this other manager. There is no waiting process for you. And then the other manager deserves a scolding. And if he does anything like this again, he's out of the league. Period. End of story. And no refunds, Adam. None.
No refund. Do we change the score of the game, or do we just leave it?
Well, I think what matters is when did the other manager realize that he couldn't pick up any of those players? And did he complain about it? If he complained about it and he couldn't do it, the commissioner should let him retroactively, like Jamey said, retroactively go back and pick up a player off of the waivers, whoever he wants, because that's what he would have been able to do before the game.
Oh, all right. Bad stuff, Fire Billy Napier. Fire you.
Yeah. No, Fire Billy Napier. No, Fire Billy Napier.
In due time. All right, let's talk buy low and sell high here. Jamey, your favorite buy low is DK Metcalf. Dave, you want to buy low on Tyreek Hill, as we do have a somewhat of a vague update on Tua. But Jamey, why are we buying low on DK?
Should have had a touchdown last week. He's been very close to finding the end zone. We know that this offense is going to be very pass heavy. I know they want to run the ball, but I don't care. Based on how bad this defense has been, they're getting healthier. I just think we're going to see Metcalf at some point go off. And number one receivers against the Falcons have been fantastic this season. So, like I said last week on Bijan, the window is closing. Get DK Metcalf before Sunday, and you might get a potential top 15 wide receiver. And I would take DK Metcalf over Davante Adams rest of the season as well.
I was going to ask you that. I would rather have Davante than DK, but the reason why the window is open is because he should have had 2 touchdowns in that game.
What about non-decaf?
He couldn't get it done. What?
You said decaf.
This is a great
I'm trying to go a little bit faster. I'm combining names. So thank you, Heisenberg. So listen, my sell high is Tile. And I think that it's Tyreek Hill. And I think that Tyreek Hill is just going to be better when Tua Tagovailoa comes back. So I'm willing to buy into that
Tyreek Hill
now.
or Davante Adams rest of the season?
Oh, I think I'd rather have Tyreek. I know that it's kind of scary to say that type of a thing.
I would by a mile.
You know 100% what to expect from Tyreek Hill when this passing game gets going. And maybe it does a little bit better with Tyler Huntley this week coming out of the bye. But I think once Tua Tagovailoa is back under center for Miami, Tyreek Hill goes right back to being a top 3, top 5 type of fantasy receiver.
All right, and the update was that he's coming back this season, but we still don't know when for Tua. Let's go to our favorite sell highs here. For Jamey, it's Alvin Kamara. For Dave, it's Cappuccino. Dave... Bijan Robinson, actually, for you, Dave. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. And remember, we're saying sell high. We're not saying get these guys off your team, get whatever you can. Bijan Robinson had a great game against Carolina. He's going to have another great game against Seattle, but he's still sharing more than we'd like with Tyler Algier. And I still think this Falcons offense, push comes to shove, will lean on Kirk Cousins, and he'll throw the football more than we would like. It's not going to be a situation where Bijan is going to go and get 20-plus touches week in and week out reliably. So if you've got a fantasy manager that's willing to give you a piece or two that will help your starting lineup, and I'm talking big pieces, I'm not talking little pieces, I think Bijan Robinson is worth giving up. But if you're getting terrible offers for Bijan, of course you're going to hang on to him.
You'd rather have Bijan or Davante Adams rest of the season?
I'd rather have Bijan rest of season.
I just got an offer of Puka Nacua and Isaiah Pacheco for Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, that's the worst thing in the world. Like, is Fire Billy Napier making offers now?
It's a good offer.
Yeah. If they were healthy, but they're not
great.
right now.
Yeah, not even close, perhaps.
No.
All right, Jamey, Alvin Kamara, are you worried about the Rattler situation?
Worried about everything with the Saints right now. I mean, look, you're talking about a team that's got a bad quarterback situation until Derek Carr returns. We don't know when that's going to be. You got the receiving core falling apart around him. You have an offensive line that's been up and down. And look, he got off to an amazing start. You got lucky last week with how he scored against the Bucs. So you know he's going to be a factor in the passing game, and I think he's still going to be very good. But he's still a 29-year-old running back that is getting a lot of work. So if you can get, similar to what Dave said about Bijan Robinson, you get something great in return for Alvin Kamara, now's the time to sell him, because there could be one of these injury absences that happens just because of an older running back getting a lot of work on a bad team right now.
Who would you rather have rest of season, Alvin Kamara or Davante Adams?
Oh, I mean, I'm not the biggest Adams guy, so I'd much rather have Alvin Kamara.
I get it. Yeah, I would too.
I think also the return of Taysom Hill is not good for Alvin Kamara. Goal line touches.
Yes.
Either way there. And your top 3 waiver wire priorities, guys. We're about to get into this, so you can just give it to me real quick. Jamey here, top 3 waiver wire priorities.
All wide receivers: JuJu Smith-Schuster, Demario Douglas, and Christian Watson.
How fast you need me to go for my top 3?
Abbreviate all of them.
JuJu, Chris, and Double D. It's the same 3 names that Jamey gave, but just a slightly different order.
Chris Watson. All right. Okay, we'll be back to talk more about the waiver wire quarterbacks and running backs. Are you going with Drake May in a great matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars? I think I'm going to ask you over Patrick Mahomes. We'll find out after this on FFT. Drake May scored 25.5 fantasy points in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues in week 6 against the Houston Texans. Now he gets the Jacksonville Jaguars. No team allows more fantasy points to quarterbacks than the Jaguars. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Dave, let's take a look at the quarterback waiver wire list here. And, you got guys like Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, that could be available in fewer leagues, but some leagues out there, right? Maybe they're ahead of Drake May. I don't know. You tell me. But May's on here. One guy that's not on here because this list is a little bit old is Aaron Rodgers. So
he's now number one. He's now number one.
All right, there you go.
And that makes the list really old because, he's 40.
There you go. He's number one for this week, Jamey?
He's the number one quarterback to add this week, and he should be rostered in 100% of leagues at this point with the addition of Davante Adams.
Okay. Well, all right. Go with that. There's playing Pittsburgh, and Drake May is playing Jacksonville. So who would you start this week if you were just choosing between the two of them?
It would be Rodgers, just because I'd rather roster him rest of season. The schedule gets much tougher for May after this week. I mean, it depends on your situation. You need to win. You want to make sure you're guaranteeing the most points. I would guess May has a higher ceiling just based on the Jaguars. But, I mean, look, Rodgers just had a 20-point game against a good Buffalo defense, a little fluky with the Hail Mary. But you would hope that Adams comes in and makes Aaron Rodgers just a more sound, higher play at the position. And that's the thing that we're looking for.
Sure. Like, I'll give up a few fantasy points from May to Rodgers, knowing that Rodgers' rest of season feels like the better option.
Caleb Williams or Aaron Rodgers?
I'll take Caleb.
I'll take Rodgers.
Okay. All right. Caleb and Dak Prescott are on a bye, so not such a bad bye week here. But if you need other options, there's Matthew Stafford against the Raiders, Daniel Jones against Philadelphia, Andy Dalton at Washington. Dave, are any of those guys going to crack your top 15 this week?
I don't think they will. I don't know if you mentioned Darnold on that list, but he's somebody that might, but otherwise not really.
Stafford will be close if Cooper Kupp does return, so just keep an eye on that.
But not top 12.
Okay.
No, he said top 15.
Oh, okay. Maybe top 15.
Yeah, Darnold's going up against Detroit. And let's take a look then at the running backs, because the running backs are tough this week. I've already done my waiver claims for about 5 leagues. And to be honest with you, not a lot of these guys were available. Sean Tucker was definitely available, but Ray Davis got scooped up. Ty Chandler scooped up. Garendo was available in maybe 2 of the 5 leagues that I looked at. I haven't really been that aggressive because I don't want to use – there are other guys, those wide receivers that we're going to talk about. There's those guys I like a lot. I don't know that I want to use my waiver priority on someone who might not have a job this week, a starting job this week. And as we talked about on the podcast this morning, Jamey, you look at the 5 run defenses that are top 5 in yards per carry allowed to running backs. 4 of them show up in the matchups. For Ray Davis, it's Tennessee. For Chandler, it's Detroit. For Garendo, it's Kansas City. And for Tucker, it's Baltimore. So you've got uncertainty with the health of the starting running backs. And you've got terrible matchups, and it's tough. What do we do here if you need a running back or if you don't need a running back? How do you change your strategy?
I mean, if you don't need a running back, then you shouldn't be prioritizing these guys. They're just going to be depth plays for you. So if you're talking about going through the waiver cycle, you hope to get maybe one of them just to see what happens in the order for the most part that's there. But if you need a running back, look, you want to hope that James Cook is out. You're going to hope that Aaron Jones doesn't return. You're going to hope that Isaac Garendo becomes the starting running back for the 49ers. And then just kind of say, okay, let's see how they do in some tough matchups. Dave talked about this on the podcast. The 49ers running back, no matter who they're facing, you'll feel comfortable with that guy. If we just knew that Garendo was going to be that guy, the playing time was almost basically split between him and Patrick Taylor, and you don't want to be chasing the 76-yard run that Garendo had at the end of the game because it was a miserable stat line without that run. So then you're looking at the Viking situation. Chandler had some good moments last year, and the Lions, look, they're down Aiden Hutchinson. That's going to change their defense. They lost the defensive tackle as well. So could we see a better performance from Chandler? And we know that the Vikings running back, whoever it's been, is going to be involved in the passing game. Davis just took on a great not a great run defense, a good run defense for the Jets, and came through with 23 total touches, 150 total yards, and the Bills running back has been good for the majority of the season. So while it's not slam dunk, okay, you're getting Jordan Mason, plug him into your lineup, and you're getting one of the best running backs in fantasy, you might be getting a number 2 running back, you might be getting a flex, but if you're desperate, you're going to lean toward touches, you're going to lean toward opportunity, and if the matchup's tough, you just have to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think there's other factors in play too. Number one, do you have James Cook? Do you have Rachaad White? Do you have Jordan Mason? Do you have somebody who might miss the game? Makes it a little bit easier to prioritize the backup from those teams. There's also the idea of some other running backs that we haven't talked about, and these aren't household names. I mean, I don't know if any of these guys are household names, Adam, but Tyler Goodson and Jeremy McNichols, these aren't guys that anybody is rushing to go and get off the waiver wire. But if you're cool with what they've done over the past couple of weeks, you can probably put in a claim for them as well. And then if plan A fails, you've got a plan B. And both of those running backs have favorable matchups this week. Goodson at Miami,
they're in the same situation,
and McNichols against Carolina.
They're in the same situation because if Brian Robinson returns, McNichols is a waste.
Sure.
And
that's
Jonathan
true.
Taylor
and
returns,
if Jonathan
then
Taylor
Goodson's a waste. So it's not like we're looking at it and we're saying, okay, these guys are out for an extended period of time. The backups are going to get at least this game, maybe a second game. The one appeal would have been Chandler, because we got the report after the week 5 injury for Aaron Jones that it was going to be week to week. And then he shows up at practice on Monday. It was a light workout, not official. They didn't have to give an injury report, but it looks like he's trending in the right direction. It looks like Jordan Mason trending in the right direction. So even the 49ers backups there may not get the opportunity to play in week 7. So there's a lot of things that play here. One thing to keep in mind, and I changed the order from what you see or what you'll see in the column on CBSSports.com, like Trey Benson, he might be one of the more appealing guys because we don't know what's going on with James Conner. The fact that he was a little bit banged up in the second half, played a season low 16 snaps. It could be Trey Benson getting a bigger opportunity just because Conner's not 100%, and we know what the injury situation is there. So there's a lot of things that play at running back. It's in your best interest to try and claim one of these guys if you can, even if you don't need them. Don't prioritize them if you don't need them, but it may be in your best interest because Davis may have some appeal later in the season. We may see one of the 49ers guys pop up later in the season. Ty Chandler, based on Aaron Jones and his age and his history, later in the season. So you may not be using them in week 7, but week 8, week 9, week 10, they may be in your starting lineup based on some injury concerns.
And I don't mind that advice either, but if you need a back this week, you might want to prioritize as many of these running backs as you can, and you just take as many shots as you can at finding somebody that can get you a floor of 10 PPR, 7 non-PPR fantasy points. And then the more of those guys you have, the more opportunities that you might have to put somebody in your lineup that you'll love starting. So I wouldn't just focus on one guy. I might put in claims for all these guys.
Yeah, but who's the best one to claim if you need someone this week? Because if you look at James Cook, we thought he was going to play on Monday, so I would think he has a decent chance to play this upcoming week, week 7. Ty Chandler, we already mentioned Aaron Jones is back. Isaac Guerrero, we already mentioned Jordan Mason is back at practice. This doesn't mean they're going to play, but at least they're practicing. Tucker is interesting because Rachaad White started as a participant in practice last week. Then he got hurt. Then he missed the last 2 days of practice. Mm-hmm. So I would think he might be the longest shot of those starting running backs for Rachaad White to play this week. But Tucker, unlike the other guys, is not the 1A, right? He's the number 2 or he's the 1B. So who is your number 1 priority from that list if you want someone for this week?
So you don't have to put in a claim for him first. It could be something that you wait to see how it all plays out. Go after some of these other guys that have more upside. But look, Dearness Johnson, while it's ugly, it's still the Patriots. And Travis Etienne, is not playing. He's out week to week with this hamstring injury. He had 6 carries, Johnson did. We know what happened last year, even though Bigsby certainly went way past him. But last year, Dearness Johnson was the number 2 guy. And he could be the one playing on passing downs because they haven't been exactly using Bigsby in that role. So if you're desperate for just some semblance of fantasy production, I would take a chance on Dearness Johnson with one of your later claims just to make sure you get somebody that you know is going to play because Tucker should be better than Dearness Johnson. Goodson and McNichols should be better than Dearness Johnson. But that's the one I think if you're talking about guaranteed to play. And the same thing with Emmanuel Wilson. He's got at least 8 touches in each of the last 4 games. 2 of those, he's been north of 8 PPR points. So they're using basically 2 running backs at this point. And while it's not the easiest of matchups against the Texans, you're still talking about a guy that may get some fourth quarter production like we've seen the last couple of games. So there are some guys here that you don't have to necessarily try to get the top priority with. And like Dave said, you could put in different priorities, different waiver moves to try and get somebody on your team, or even just wait till Wednesday and Thursday and see how it shakes out for your first waiver run on Tuesday. But there are some guys out there, while they're not the most sexy names and don't have the highest appeal, highest ceiling, they could get you that minimum floor just based on the amount of touches that they're going to get.
Okay. Well said. Dave, if you want to follow, great. If not, we'll move on.
No, I think we should move on. I think it's nicely wrapped up for everybody.
Okay. Look, last week we told you to pick up JuJu Smith-Schuster. Only some of you listened, and we love you. For those of you who didn't listen, you have a second chance. We'll tell you how we prioritize JuJu Smith-Schuster with some other very appealing wide receivers, and then we'll get into the tight ends after this on FFT. Back here on Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. We're taking a look at wide receivers and tight ends available on the waiver wire. And it's really crazy to think in Week 7, Christian Watson is rostered in only 47% of leagues. This is a guy we were so excited about. He's coming off a nice game, 3 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown, but only 4 targets. Meanwhile, Demario Douglas, 9 targets in 3 of his last 4 games. And JuJu Smith-Schuster, without Rashee Rice, he had 7 catches for 1 million yards against the Saints 2 weeks ago. Very impressive. It felt like 1 million yards. So Jamey's got it. JuJu, Douglas, Christian Watson, Kayshon Boutte just kind of lumped in there with Douglas. And Dave, you have JuJu, Watson, Douglas, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Dave, why don't you go ahead and give me your thoughts on this waiver wire list?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of great wide receivers to go and pick up. So this isn't like the running back group whatsoever. It feels safe. You know what direction a lot of these players are going in, at least as long as there aren't any trades that impact any of these players. But JuJu Smith-Schuster looks like he's the number 1 wide receiver on the Kansas City Chiefs. That's good enough for me. And we've already seen it. We saw it against the Saints. That's a tough matchup. And he went out there and he had 20 PPR points. I don't know if he's going to get 20 PPR points very often in Kansas City, but I think he does have a shot to get around the 14 or so PPR points that he averaged when he was in Kansas City last go around before he had a concussion, kind of set him back a little bit. Watson's number 2 for me, and he hasn't played a lot this year, but you said it, Adam. We were really excited about him. There were some of us that thought that he had a shot to be the number 1 wide receiver in Green Bay. I feel like that ship has sailed, and it's going to be Jaden Reed as the number 1 guy, but he can be a close number 2. He has 12 targets this year. He's played 5 games, not a lot of targets. 4 of those 12 have been in the end zone. This is where they look for him. And if you remember in his first couple of years, he averaged a touchdown every 5.5 catches or so. And I think that's going to continue. So I like that upside in a really good offense ahead of Demario Douglas. But Douglas is the one who's widely available. And you said 9 targets in 3 of his last 4 games. That's something that I think fantasy managers can expect to see. And those PPR points are going to continue to accumulate. Will he be as good as Christian Watson every single week moving forward? Maybe in PPR you can make that case. I don't think it's going to happen in half and none, partially because he's catching passes from a rookie quarterback and he's in an offense that really just doesn't have the same type of firepower and the same type of offensive expectation as Green Bay has.
Okay. Well, Jamey and I got into a little podcast fight earlier today, Demario Douglas versus Christian Watson. So you just heard Dave's case for both of them, really, but Watson's slightly ahead. Mm-hmm. Jamey, I do feel like I won the argument. So I'm going to let you go ahead and try to get your pride back here and tell me why you'd take Demario Douglas over Christian Watson.
Yeah, it's good that you think that. I think the thing for Douglas, like you said, he's got 9 targets in 3 of the last 4 games, 2 games in a row with at least 6 receptions, and the numbers spiked when Drake May stepped on the field. Now, I will say this. If Jaden Reed is out, you're taking Christian Watson maybe ahead of JuJu. That's how much upside he has. I would still take JuJu first, but if Reed was going to miss any extended amount of time, it doesn't seem that that's the case. But he's got the ankle injury on top of Wicks having the shoulder injury. So hopefully Watson's playing time ticks up without Wicks there, and they start to use him a little bit more because he has not been featured like I thought he was going to be featured at the start of the season. You still have the injury concern to worry about with Watson because it seems like he's always hurt, unfortunately. But in the case of Douglas, I'm just looking at it from a PPR perspective alone. In non and half PPR, it should absolutely be Christian Watson. But you're going to get probably 9+ targets for Douglas on a week-to-week basis. You're going to get probably 6 catches from Douglas, and that's hard to overlook in PPR. It's the same argument like we're talking about for a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson this season, for Josh Downs of late with Joe Flacco. These guys just get open, they get easy opportunities, they get easy catches, and it's just hard to overlook the potential in what they can be in PPR. Watson should have more touchdowns. Watson should have more yards, but those receptions just rack up for guys like Douglas. And just from a 1-week perspective alone, taking on Jacksonville in week number 7, give me Demario Douglas ahead of Christian Watson as a starter, and I will take Douglas slightly ahead of Watson long-term in PPR just because of the reception total alone.
Look, if you think he's going to get 9 targets a week, I don't really think he's a 150 target kind of guy, but like on pace for that. But if you do think that, then you better add Demario Douglas.
How many targets is Wan'Dale Robinson on pace for?
11 billion.
11 billion.
It's a ton.
160 or so.
And this might be actually a better wide receiver than Wan'Dale Robinson when you get down to it. I just want to point out, he's had 3 games in his last 4 with at least 9 targets. 2 of them, 13 or fewer full PPR points. So
2 of those are with Jacoby Brissett.
That's the other thing. So it is good that Drake May's playing there. And I think that does boost everybody in this passing game. But I don't know if it's enough to say that Demario Douglas is a must-start guy.
If we're going to do that, what were Watson's numbers when Malik Willis was quarterback?
Well, it was terrible. I don't even know if he played. And if he had played, it was terrible. But I get your point. The problem is he's got Jordan Love.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So those are your top three. And then let's talk about a couple of other wide receivers before we turn our attention to tight end. If those three are not in the cards for you, if someone else grabs them, Dave, where are we turning at wide receiver this week?
At wide receiver, like I said, there are a lot of other names that are good there besides those first three. I think Romeo Doubs makes sense as someone that you could gravitate toward. One of the touchdowns last week that he had was pretty fluky, but if Dontavian Wicks is going to miss time, I think a lot of that target share will go toward Christian Watson, but I think Romeo Doubs is still going to continue to be a factor for Green Bay. And then you've got these Rams wide receivers. I like Tutu Atwell in terms of him being a little bit safer. The upside is there with Jordan Whittington. We saw it in his last game. Tons of targets, plenty of catches, some good yardage, kind of like what we were talking about Demario Douglas. I'm worried about Cooper Kupp coming back. If Kupp comes back, I think that hurts Whittington. It might put him on the bench and make him irrelevant for fantasy purposes if and unless something happens to Cooper Kupp again. So Atwell makes some sense. Xavier Legette makes some sense. And then Michael Wilson also makes some sense. He could end up being the number 2 target getter for Arizona. We know that Marvin Harrison has a concussion. It did not look good. I would expect him to miss week 7. Wilson should be able to take his place and be in the neighborhood of 6 or 7 targets.
All right, let's take a look at the tight ends that are available here. And Hunter Henry is number 1 for Jamey. Is he a top 12 tight end for you in your rankings this week?
For this week, yes. I mean, you're talking about a situation where what did Cole Kmet just do against the Jaguars? Their back end of their defense is awful, and Drake May, I think, just makes this offense that much better. So, Henry didn't have a huge game, 3 catches, 41 yards, and a touchdown, but I think that's something to build off of just because better quarterback play. And to go back to the Douglas versus Watson argument, Watson's got a crowded receiving core to deal with. Douglas does not. This is basically the second best pass catcher on the team for the Patriots right now in terms of where Hunter Henry's at because Jalen Polk's not ready to go. Kayshon Boutte, I don't think is going to be necessarily a huge factor. So I like what Henry's got the chance for just 1 week alone. Like the setup for him taking on Jacksonville.
And just to confirm that he is your number 1 waiver wire tight end, right?
Yep.
Okay. And what if Evan Ingram is available?
Then he would be the number 1
Ingram
waiver
for sure,
wire. Yeah. You might place him ahead of everybody.
Right. That was my follow-up.
Yeah.
JuJu Smith-Schuster or Evan Ingram if they're both available.
JuJu.
I'd say Ingram because of the tight end position hell that we've been in for much of this year. And so if we've got somebody that's going to get that type of target volume from week to week on a team that's going to be trailing and has a hard time running the football, happy to get him.
Anybody buying into the long-term prospects of Cade Otton at this point?
He closed last season playing well. You got some, injury concerns. Trey Palmer's been out of the lineup for the last 2 weeks for the Bucs, and Jalen McMillan has exactly stepped up. If Mike Evans misses any time, he's seemingly banged up in that game last week against the Saints. So we'll see what happens with him moving forward. Clearly, that would make things more appealing for Cade Otton. But look, he's playing well the last month. I think he's definitely in the conversation to be a top 12 tight end. I don't think it's a slam dunk, but if you're stuck at the position, certainly we have 2 pretty prominent tight ends on a bye this week without Cole Kmet, and certainly the better of the 2, Jake Ferguson. Otton's not a bad fill-in option at all.
Like I said, tight end hell.
And Dave, give me 15 seconds on why you like Taysom Hill, who is questionable this week.
Well, here's somebody who's not really a tight end, but can play a little bit of tight end, can catch the ball a little bit, and score short yardage touchdowns, and maybe even throw a pass or 2. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife for the Saints offense, and somebody who's like that, especially given the Saints receiving core right now, I would prioritize him over Hunter Henry, but it's more of a week-to-week thing, actually, with both these guys.
It would be fun to see Taysom Hill taking on Sean Payton this week.
Yeah, it's true.
In what? Like
in pickleball, Adam. I want to see them play in pickleball.
Okay. Well, I would like to see that too. Pickleball is very exciting. Now, for those of you, I have to apologize to our audience, our loyal audience. You're going, I told all my friends to tune in. I told my parents, when are they going to play Who Has More? Well, that is coming up next. I am sorry for making you wait so long. Who Has More is up next after this break on FFT. It is time for America's 31st favorite fantasy football game show. It's time for Who Has More on Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Here's how the game works. I ask Dave and Jamey a question. They answer it. And sometimes we keep score, and sometimes we just don't. We'll try to keep score today. Let's do it. Who has more rushing touchdowns? Justin Fields or Alvin Kamara?
Fields.
I'll say Fields too.
Love the confidence, you losers. It is Alvin Kamara, 6'5". You're both wrong. 6'5".
I thought you
for
said
Kamara.
rest of season. Sorry.
Well, if it's rest of
No,
season,
no.
it would be.
That's America's 33rd favorite game show. Who will have more? That's coming up on Wednesday.
So what's 32nd?
Who used to have more?
Okay.
Who had more?
Who had more?
We have less of you.
Alvin Kamara has 6 rushing touchdowns. You just talked about him as a sell high. He had 11 rushing touchdowns in his previous 3 seasons combined, and will be a factor there. But actually, wasn't planning on talking about this, but Russell Wilson might be the starting quarterback as soon as this week. Jamey, what do you make of that with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson?
It's probably safe to drop Justin Fields if you need to make a transaction at quarterback. And look, Russ is hopefully going to be better for George Pickens, for Pat Freiermuth, and whatever they decide to do with either Roman Wilson or Van Jefferson or Calvin Austin at the second receiver spot. So, that was the thought going into the year, that if Russ is starting, that those guys can be better in the passing game. Justin Fields has been a good fantasy quarterback. 4 straight games with 20-plus points. He's been, surprisingly good for the Steelers, too, getting him off to a 4-2 starts. This is a weird decision, I think, for the time being. But the best thing for Russell Wilson will be is if he can get those receivers going at a high level.
Who has more receiving yards? Tyrone Tracy Jr. or Jahmyr Gibbs?
Jahmyr Gibbs.
It's got to be Gibbs.
Oh, does it, Dave?
Yeah,
it does.
So.
All right. You are right. It is Gibbs, but only by 5 yards. Because Jahmyr Gibbs has only 104 receiving yards. And, he's coming off his worst game, 12.1 PPR fantasy points. Dave, are we missing some warning signs with Jahmyr Gibbs? Or do you think he's A-OK, must-start, great fantasy option?
I think he's still a must-start fantasy option. Are we comfortable calling him a top 5 fantasy running back rest of the season? That's something that I think we could revisit and probably say no to, given the landscape and the other running backs that are out there, and given how David Montgomery has been playing fantastic football for the Lions, and he scores pretty much every single week, if not twice a week. And so that obviously cuts into Jahmyr Gibbs. They're splitting about 50-50, but we know that Gibbs is explosive, so he's got that on his side, and he's still going to get his share of touchdowns along the way. We just haven't seen it lately. Same thing with his receiving yardage. We haven't seen a lot of that from him lately, but that'll come around too.
Okay, next up. Who has more? You guys are tied at 1, by the way. Who has more targets with everyone healthy? Okay, so it's a little bit of a tricky question.
That's a meatball of a qualifier there, Adam.
We're getting rid of week 3 when George Kittle and Deebo Samuel were out. Who has more targets with everyone healthy? Those 5 games. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, or George Kittle?
I think I want to say Kittle.
What'd you say, Jamey?
Ayuk.
Dave, your official answer is Kittle?
Yeah.
Oh, a huge win for Dave Richard to take the 2-1 lead. George Kittle. It's very close. I think they're all within 4 targets of each other. But
Sounds
George
about
Kittle,
right. Sure.
the leader now. Not a lot of targets to go around there necessarily. And listen to this. They're second to last in running back target rate. So as we anticipate a McCaffrey return, hopefully in the next few weeks.
That's going to change.
Now the time to be selling. Sell Kittle? Deebo?
I mean,
go
ahead, James.
Yeah, it's not a bad call. What are you hoping to get in return? Because Kittle, you got to get a must-start tight end. And so you're asking somebody to trade maybe a Sam Laporta who's been struggling, or a Dalton Kincaid and somebody else, or a Pitts and somebody else. At this point, I'd probably just write it out with Kittle just because he's been so fantastic. There's no guarantee that McCaffrey's McCaffrey when he comes back. He's a 28-year-old running back with 2 Achilles injuries. We're hoping it's after their bye week in early November. What if they say, okay, we're going to wait until December because we want to make sure he's healthy for the playoff run? So I would hold Kittle at this point. I certainly would hold Deebo at this point. Ayuk, if you could find somebody to take him and get something great in return, I think that's the move you make. But Kittle and Deebo, I'm probably going to ride this out.
Absolutely. We're sitting on the basement floor of tight end hell right now, and you're going to give up potentially the number 1 tight end rest of season? What are you getting for this guy? If you're getting a lot, then sure, you can go and stream. But we're talking about Hunter Henry as a top 12 tight end, for crying out loud.
Oh, you downgrade, you get Kincaid and a really good wide receiver or something like that.
Like Davante Adams?
Wow, that's a lot. I mean, I would do that. Yes,
I would,
but
yeah, sure. But
all right,
that's what it's going to take for me to move off Kittle.
2-1, Dave.
Maybe a little less.
Who has more red zone targets, Justin Jefferson or Aaron Jones? Gee, it must be Aaron Jones if I'm asking the question, right? I mean, how could it possibly be Justin Jefferson? I'm trying to get in your head here. Who has more red zone targets?
Aaron Jones.
This smells like a tie. I feel like they're tied for you to even make that little extra commentary at the end.
Not a tie. All
right,
so what did Jamey say? He said Jones?
He said Aaron Jones.
All right, I'll say Jefferson just to see if we can keep this competitive.
Win for Jamey Eisenberg. He gets Aaron Jones has 7 red zone targets. Justin Jefferson has 5 red zone targets. And we are tied at 2. We've got 2 left. Who has more games with 22 or more fantasy points in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues? Daniel Jones or Joe Burrow?
I think it's Jones. I think Jones definitely has 3. And Burrow had the big one. I'm not sure if he even got to 22 in his other games. I'll say Jones.
I'll say Jones also.
It is Jones, 3-2. Joe Burrow did it twice, but it's 3-2. All right, so it comes down to this. I'm only going to give you guys like 1 second to answer this one. Who has more consonants in his last name? Consonants in his last name. Jamey Eisenberg or Kyle Juszczyk?
Juszczyk.
Yeah, you guys got it. Juszczyk with the win, 6-5. But here's my question: the letter Y in Juszczyk, that's a vowel, right?
Sometimes.
Well, in this case, I think it's a vowel.
I would say yes. It's a vowel here.
Probably a vowel. All right. See, we're learning a lot today. Congratulations on the tie, guys. What did you think of who has more? Did you have fun today on who has more?
I don't know why we play this game.
It's the 28th best game I've ever played.
Show them what they lost, folks. All right, when we come back, we'll read your tweets, your ad drop questions after this on Fantasy Football Today. We are back on Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Okay, we got some questions on X. Devin wants to know who to drop.
Yeah.
Poor Devin.
Devin's barking up the...
Devin doesn't realize the error of his ways.
Right. Devin is going to drop somebody to pick up a tight end on bye to replace his tight end who's also on bye. So he needs to not pick up Komet. He needs to pick up somebody like Taysom Hill or Hunter Henry. And who should he drop to do it? From that list, I'm going to say Zach Moss.
Yep.
Okay. Devin, hope you paying attention there.
You got to reach out to them and let them know.
Yeah. Bob wants to know if Tyrone Tracy made Devin Singletary merely a flex option.
You can spell his name backwards. Yes, I think he has made him a potential flex option, but we'll see what the matchups look like and certainly what happens with Singletary healthy. Dable loves Singletary, but Tyrone Tracy is going to be a factor moving forward.
Right? That's Tyrone backwards. You said you could spell his name backwards.
I'm worried that Tyrone Tracy made Devin Singletary someone that we're going to be dropping soon. I'm honestly hoping for that. I don't want a shared backfield for the Giants. We need someone to be featured here. Let's go to our next tweet, our next X. Okay, do I pick up Caleb Williams? I've got Mahomes and Tua.
So in this case, you can, and you could probably drop Tua and then still hope to pick him up when he's healthy, because if Caleb Williams is on your waiver wire, Tua is not clearly going to be a priority if you don't have an IR spot stash.
Agreed. You'll drop Tua, pick up Caleb, start Mahomes this week.
Okay, let's go to our next one here. Is Ray Davis going to be the Tyler Algier of Buffalo? That's a great question. What do you guys think?
It's entirely possible that happens, and that's another reason to sort of prioritize Ray Davis. But even in that role in Buffalo, okay, think about it for a second. James Cook has been great when he's been healthy. Ray Davis could be the second guy, and Josh Allen is still going to take some touchdowns away on the ground. So I don't think he'll be even as good as Algier has been.
Let's see. Do we have time for one more? Nope, we don't. You guys lose. That's what you get for not winning at Who Has More. Who has less tweets? It's us. And that's going to do it for Fantasy Football Today here on CBS Sports Network. Thanks so much for watching. We're back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern for Dave and Jamey. I'm Adam. Have a great day, everybody, and thanks again.